Hey guys, Mark here from World Multisport. Today we're talking about sculling and one-arm freestyle in the pool. For triathlon swimming, what we're trying to achieve is a high stroke rate because the conditions in open water can be quite rough with the chop or other competitors, wind, different tides, that type of thing. So the conditions can be varied and we need to get into a high stroke rate. And the reason we want to get into a high stroke rate is we want to get into what's called the power position, where my elbow is up, my wrist and my fingertips are below my elbow, and I'm pulling through with my big muscles in my back, the lats, latissimus dorsi, and we're pulling through. So that's where we derive most of our forward propulsion, by getting a good power position in the water with our arms, and then also reducing drag, so trying to be streamlined in the water. Well then, how do we actually achieve that position there? Now there's an argument whether we drill or whether we don't drill for triathlon. Our movement patterns as adults are primarily set. It's very hard to change our movement patterns. And we need to remember that swimming is a very technical sport, and good swimmers are quite flexible and have a large range of motion, especially through their upper body. A lot of triathletes typically don't have that flexibility, whether it be because they're spending a lot of time in the bike in a time trial position, or running, or on their phone, or at the computer. So their flexibility is not that great, and their movement patterns are set in stone. To change those movement patterns would require, if you wanted to improve your movement patterns in the water and get a technically better stroke, you'd need to probably spend 7 days a week in the water, a lot of dry land flexibility work, and then you would start to achieve the results you want. But it would take at least 6 months to probably see permanent changes, because you're trying to change your movement patterns and technique and then produce that movement under physical stress in a race. It's a very, very difficult thing to do. That doesn't mean that drills don't have an application. There are two drills that I really, really like, that I think are very good for triathlon and helping you get into that power position where your elbow is higher than your wrist, wrist is higher than the fingertips. The first one is sculling, front sculling. Now with front sculling, we're looking at keeping pressure on our hands, in terms of water pressure on our hands, the whole time when we're doing this movement. Now when you're doing sculling, you're not actually moving forward through the water very quickly. In fact, it's quite slowly. And the range of movement is not great. So it's just, we're pushing out with the water and then in with the water. Out, and you'll notice that my hand changes. So thumb up to thumb down. And the range of movement is from my shoulder just out past there. So about 10 degrees. Out and in. But the elbow is higher than the wrist, and we're keeping that range of movement there and keeping pressure on our palm the whole time. We're doing that with both hands. So what that does, it helps to improve, I wouldn't say you get a feel for the water, because only swimmers really get a feel for the water, in my opinion. Triathletes, a lot of triathletes will never get that feel for the water. But when you do some sculling and then you go into a normal swim stroke, you'll feel almost like you've got more purchase on the water. And when you've got more purchase on the water, you've got more propulsion, so you go faster. And that's what sculling does. You can do sculling with a pull buoy, which is what I recommend, and you don't kick. This is all about an upper body exercise only. Upper body only, and about trying to develop a little bit of feel for the water. And this is called front scull. Simple, short movement, keeping pressure on your palms the whole time, making sure your elbow above the wrist, wrist above the fingertips. The other one is one-arm freestyle. Now with this one, what I recommend, the one-arm freestyle, what you're doing is you're putting paddles on ideally, and even fins. If you're a strong swimmer, don't worry about the fins, but the fins will sit you higher up in the water, have better body position, so you're creating less drag. But by putting the paddles on, we're improving our strength and the ability to have more force and power through our stroke. And we want to get to the point where at the front of our stroke, we get into that power position, the elbow is higher than the wrist and the wrist is higher than the fingertips, and we're just keeping one arm in front and then pushing back with the other arm. So we're working on the front of the stroke, the catch, and then pulling right back and really working at the exit of the stroke. Where I see a lot of people go wrong is they don't push far enough back when the hand exits the water. So pretend as though you want to brush past your hip with your thumb, or you feel the paddle brush past your hip. So you keep one arm directly out in front of you straight, like you're Superman, but you've only got one arm, and the other arm is just doing one arm freestyle the whole time, and you're working on that front part of the stroke. So place and press, and then push, but pushing right back. In this instance, what you do is you might do 25 meters of one arm, and then you do 25 meters of the other arm. And you can do this repetitively. Now, I've done this with some swimmers, and it's had outstanding results in really improving their strength. By doing sculling and one arm freestyle with paddles, it can improve strength, fitness, and a little bit of technique to help you get that purchase of the water and greater propulsion, that ability to move forward quickly. In terms of the paddles, you want paddles that are about the size of your hand. You don't want big dinner plate paddles, especially if you're new to swimming, because that'll put too much pressure on your shoulder and potentially cause injury. But paddles that are about the size of your hand are all that you need. And you can also make the one arm freestyle a bit of conditioning work by doing it nice and quickly. By doing it quickly with a bit of intensity, you get the conditioning effect as well, but you're also developing the specific strength that you need for that one arm freestyle.